Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are looking at Dimension Force. While I was away on vacation being a dirty bum, we got the rest of Dimension Force fully revealed, at least the 80 card OCG version. We obviously will get the 20 TCG exclusive cards revealed a couple months from now, but for now we've got the core of the set, and I want to talk about how good I think it is. I love breaking these sets down and really talking about this stuff because it is interesting to go through and see patterns, and also just generically, like, how good is Konami doing? Are they doing a good job? Are they making good sets? Let's take a look here, because honestly, early on with Dimension Force, I did not have a lot of hope. I don't think it started that strong, but I do think it rounded out the end. But obviously, I have my own criteria for how we break things down. I tend to do this a little more competitively speaking, and I'm not always looking for new tier 1 decks that are going to change the game. But I do love it when Konami takes decks that cannot even attempt to play in the current format or are very, very weak, and give them enough support to actually be able to compete. I'm more so interested in that stuff, but I do still care if the format changes with new competitive cards. I just want stuff that affects things, you know what I mean? When we get a core set, these are core sets, and it doesn't change anything in the game, that's when I put my head down in sadness. So there's three things I like to divide up sets into. The first thing is new archetypes, brand new archetypes, on their own. 2, that is support for archetypes that already exist, and 3, generic cards that are good. The rest is just filler. It has no use, but I understand why it needs to be there. So let's start off with the new archetypes, because there's only 2 of them. Obviously we'll find out if there's more later on in the TCG exclusives, but for now we just got these bad mamma jammas, because we start off with Therians, and I think honestly I thought the set was really underwhelming until we got Therians. And then I was like, this archetype is really cool. Not only does it seem to be a really cool engine on its own, the way it works, but also has some good splashability into a lot of other decks. A lot of plant decks are going to be taking advantage of this, and I think mainly a lot of machine decks are going to be taking advantage of this engine there, which actually makes it a little bit generically splashable there. It seems like it has a lot of potential. I don't know if the pure version is quite there yet. It seems a little clunky without an in-archetype normal summon, a little bit weak on consistency with stuff like that, but I do think there's a lot of potential, and I do think this is a huge plus for the set. And the other new archetype we got is Scareclaw, another one with good potential. We only have 1 Link monster, but that Link monster is really strong. All the main deck monsters are extenders, but you kind of need to see them together. So there's no 1 card combo at the moment, so we will have to see where we end up there. But honestly, all in all, I think it's a good start. It reminds me of early on Crusadia. A lot of the monsters are extenders like that. They have their own Link 3 that's pretty good, and we just need to see a little more, to be honest. It is somewhat generic, you're not really getting locked out of a ton of stuff, but we do still need to see a little help here at some point. So hopefully that comes down the line, but they're both off to a good start. Therian is just a little more splashable, I think, than Scareclaw will end up being. All right, moving on, we're going to talk about support. Okay, so the archetypes are solid. Neither of them are changing the game, tier 0, tier 1 meta threats, but they both are solid. And there's nothing. I hate it when we got War Rock or Ice Jade, and we were just oh, this does nothing. All right, here for the support, we got a bunch of zombie support. I do have part of this and also the generic support stuff, because even this card could be thrown in there, but we did get 5, I think, new zombie cards, including 3 new synchros, 2 new main deck monsters, and I think a spell. And did we get a trap? I don't remember if we got a trap or not. I think it might not have been great though. So we got a good little 7-card cluster here. Zombies need it, and these cards aren't terrible. I think it may push that deck into a full-on synchro direction alongside of the Ballard Rock control stuff, which is pretty cool. They definitely needed some of these extenders that they're getting here. So we like that a lot. Next up here we have Predaplants. This is another one. Predaplants, not only the pure version, so has a small subsection of fans in Yu-Gi-Oh, but also this being splashable as into other decks as a legit engine, specifically plant decks. But even we saw Therians, the best version of Therians may be, if you're playing it pure, a Predaplant normal summon engine with Orphis Scorpio and Lone Fire Blossom and stuff like that. So this card immensely helps with that. There's another one that gets you a search when it's sent to grave, and overall pretty solid support. Next up, we have Odd Eyes Pendulum, Graph Dragon. We got some weird pendulum stuff. Mainly the generic stuff is really good, but this card and the actual like Perform Pow cards are a little underwhelming. I don't think they'll see too much play in the better versions of Pendulum, but you never know. People always get creative there in their Pendulum decks. Heroic cards come here. Some nice cards for Heroic Challengers, but unfortunately, I still think the deck just doesn't do enough. It still seems to be like a go second, make a Chungus kind of deck, but we all know those decks like don't really do much in Yu-Gi-Oh! Unless like you have like inherently busted ways where your opponent can't respond to what you're doing and all that shenanigans. So we'll see, but like it's nice for heroics. That's kind of just where we're at with that. All right, next up we have Symphonic support. Couple cards here. I think there were like what 4 or 5 cards here for Symphonics. They actually seem to do like a decent little bit. They can do some cool combos for sure, and like I think they'll mesh a little bit more with Pendulum decks now as maybe an engine, but you know, it's just more cool than anything. Like I don't know, like I don't think they're I still think this won't be played in the better versions of Pendulum at the end of the day. And then we get to some of the few cards here. Dinorphia, we got 2 new cards, which is huge for them. I loved their start in Battle of Chaos. I wanted to see them go a little bit deeper here. We got a phenomenal fusion monster and a phenomenal trap. Like legit, we now have a new best boss monster and a new best engine card in the deck. So happy with the route they went with the Dinorphias. I actually think this deck might be one of the better trap control decks in the format. Like legit, you know how Altergeist kind of always floats in that tier 2 range? I actually think it might be like better than Altergeist now, but we'll have to see. Definitely has its weaknesses. Moving on, we got a couple branded cards. Then we have this one and also a spell. The spell was a little less interesting. It's like an okay removal spell, but this card's actually crazy, right? It lets you target a Despia or a level 8 or higher fusion engrave, summon it, and then you immediately perform a fusion summon by banishing materials from either field. Either field. With some of the generic shit that we have in Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, this card is like a pseudo super poly. I think this card will definitely see play. We'll just have to see what the setup looks like around it in its deck. We also got a new dragon for kind of like the Albaz lore type stuff. He has Albaz in the name, so that is important for the new fusion card, as well as a couple other cards that have synergy there. It's a decent card. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's like, okay, yeah, and it floats. It's good. It honestly is pretty good. So I'm definitely a fan of the new cards here. Like not broken, but like really good, really good. Maybe the trap is broken. 2 Ancient Warrior cards. This guy's fine. The spell is also a decent little extender. It's kind of like Tensu, but for Ancient Warriors. The only downside with this guy is he has no way to summon himself, so you have to have other ways to get him out. Otherwise, he would have been really strong. I think they're fine. I don't know if it's really going to infect Ancient Warriors that much. 2 Weather Painter cards. This is actually pretty cool. Weather Painters actually go from like a tier 5, tier 8, tier 13 deck to like actually probably a tier 3 deck that you need to watch out for if you're a meta player, because this deck can, with a really good like gas hand, set up like 3 negations turn 1, or if like, I don't know, the deck just likes to play stuff like Torrential Tribute because all the monsters can quick tag out to dodge a Torrential Tribute type of effect, and like Gamma and Defension Shifter, all that stuff. Like the deck's actually pretty good at all that stuff. So you just need to be wary because the deck can play some cards that a lot of other rogue decks can't afford to play. And it's much better now. It's much faster now because of the new field spell, which is pretty good. One more Dogmatica card. This card's actually not bad either because it allows you to ritual summon straight from deck. You tribute Dogmatica monster and or ritual fusion or synchro monsters from field whose levels have to exactly equal the Dogmatica ritual, but you do get to summon the Dogmatic ritual straight out of deck, so you still need the monster on field. But even just having just Ecclesia in hand goes normal summon Ecclesia, search this on the opponent's turn, tribute Ecclesia, and there is a level 4 ritual that's actually not a bad floodgate. And I think there's also a level 8 one, but I don't remember exactly how good that one is. But that's kind of cool, like leaning a little bit more into the ritual stuff in the archetype and giving them a more powerful card to get them out. It's pretty cool. New Sylvan Link monster. I don't know how good this card will be in other plant decks, but at least for Sylvans, this card seems pretty cool. We'll just have to see if Sylvans can do enough in 2021 now. Warrock, get 1 more card. It's a decent card. It lets them set any Warrock spell or trap directly from deck. it's a nice consistency card, but like Warrocks don't need consistency. They need like any way to do anything competent in 2021. Ice Jade, a cool floodgate for them. It does require you to have like an Ice Jade monster and their field spell on the field, which is kind of brutal, but it may still be just a one of, like, if you have the setup for it. This card is just like skill drain, kind of. So like searchable skill drain is pretty good, I hear. And then for the deck build pack that we're getting right now, like Grand Creators in like a week, we have a new Punk card, a new Exorcister Exceed, and a new monster Disruption to pair with the adventure token stuff. Pretty cool stuff all together. Honestly, I think they're all relatively solid for their individual archetypes. We'll just have to see if they come together as well as we might hope. So that's it for all the support. Pretty solid stuff, honestly. I think like Heroic Challenger might be the one super underwhelming thing, whereas like everything else I was like, you know what, if I'm giving support to this archetype, this was pretty satisfying. So take that how you will. And then we get to our generic stuff. These are cards that are just pretty generically applicable to kind of a more wider range of decks. I have this guy on here. This guy could have counted as support, but it's Mare of the Shore. He's like Armageddon Knight for Aqua monsters. He can just, when he's normal summon, send any normal or special, send any Aqua from deck to grave. But he does have a bonus effect where on the end phase, you contribute him to target an Aqua monster in your grave and add it back to your hand. So you don't even have to, if you're not even making use of this card on the field as material or anything, you just like send him to grave and add back another card, another Aqua from grave, which is honestly pretty cool. That gives you setup while also getting you the Foolish Burial. I think this card's pretty cool. But when you look at it, it's like maybe frogs, but like frogs are so specific and they want to play with trap cards that like I don't know if this guy would be worth it. Maybe if he was a level 2 Aqua, he'd be worth it, but I don't know. It's interesting. Like I don't think he's going to do much out the gate, but all we know with all this stuff, we got Lifeless Leaf Fish, it did nothing. Then we got Shark support, and now it's actually pretty good. We have Mare of the Shore. We don't have anything there for really to work into that great, but all we need is one cool, solid graveyard using Aqua deck, and this guy becomes immediately like their best starter, right? Like that's all we need to look at there. Like I said with the zombie stuff, but all their stuff is so generic. Like this generic, completely generic Synchro 6, literally just during the main phase gets you a Foolish Burial for any zombie monster, and then when it floats. Alright, when any zombie monster is destroyed by battle while this is in grave, it comes back to the field. Crazy, which is like actually nice follow-up. Big booty. Like stuff is crazy, and it's a tuner, so it can help you synchro climb. Like some of this card stuff is just so generic, but it's only zombie stuff. So like it's generic, but like to a degree, just because it's all zombie. We do get a new synchro monster, level 11 synchro, Psychic and Punisher. This card's pretty cool. If your life points are equal or lower than your opponent, this card is unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. Period. All activated effects. That's actually pretty nice. All you have to do is watch out for your opponent using like effects that burn them to get under you so that he's not at towers anymore. But generically makeable towers, 35. You can also pay 1,000 to target a monster you control and your opponent controls and banish them both. That could be itself too, but ideally you want to be banishing something smaller. But he also gains attack based on the difference between the life points of both of you in the battle phase. So pretty cool card. It's nice that it's generic. We'll see if this comes up at all, but I don't know. More generic towers type cards. Crazy. And this is it. This is the chase card in the set. I know it's a pendulum support card. This is essentially what do you want to call this? Like Electromite 0.5. Not as good as Electromite. Maybe just call it Electromite 2.0. But it's not as good as Electromite, but it is close. And I think that's a big thing because I don't think it is generically as busted as Electromite. Its restriction does hinder the way you are able to sequence your plays and the amount of total advantage you're able to get off of this card. But I do still think it's a really good card. It's a really great link too for pendulums. And I think we'll see a resurgence. Also, we got a new good pendulum archetype revealed the other day from the next deck build pack after whatever it is, the one we're getting in like a week. Extra Pendulum. This is another spell card. Technically falls under pendulum support. Could have been in the support section, but this card gives you an additional pendulum summon on top of the one you already get. That is insane. Not much to say about that. Like, I don't need to explain how that's crazy. Got a couple trap cards that are also pretty interesting. Pawn Shop Ledger Book. This card is like a double Farfa. Targets 2 monsters your opponent controls. You banish them till the end phase, and your opponent gains 1,000 life points for every monster left the field this way. Whatever, life points is life points, but double Farfa's not bad. And I love that it's up to 2. We've seen that like there have been cards that have to target 2, and because of that, they just become less flexible, less good, and like get out. But like this card is still maybe like a generically playable card. We just don't know if they get their materials back, which is kind of annoying. So you have to be playing a deck that's pretty good at like clearing stuff. But yeah, could be an interesting card. And then also Cross Exclusion. This card's pretty cool as well. It negates any monster effect that activates in the hand, but when you negate it, your opponent then has to discard a card from their hand. So this card's pretty cool. I mean, it's a 2-for-1, right? You're gonna negate something activating the hand, whether it's a hand trap, whether it's an engine card, an extender from hand, and then they have to discard something else. Now, a lot of decks just have graveyard synergy, so the discard isn't always just like a raw -1, but it does at least give you hand knowledge, and it probably takes away a little utility out of their hand, which is really cool. So I think this is a pretty interesting card. If we have meta decks that like know that we know they play a ton of engine cards in hand and they activate in hand, like this card may be like kind of crazy. Therians, I want to go back on this. This guy specifically is super splashable in all machine decks that just put machine monsters in grave, which is like just everything. As well as the fact that the plant one is a good searcher as well, so it searches this guy. It's a little bit more clunky in plant decks, but I do still think it may be worthwhile just as like a power boost, and also helping you set up negates before you play into stuff like Nib and whatnot. So really cool stuff. I like this engine a lot. We'll just have to see what takes the best advantage of it, but like ABC, Cyber Dragon, Earth Machine, those are probably the front runners of what's going to take the best advantage of it. And then we have this guy. He's interesting. I don't know how crazy he is, but he's definitely interesting, and he is generic. He can just target and destroy any monster on your field with a different type and attribute from his own, Light Warrior. And if you do, summon him. He's a level 6 tuner. Ideally, you don't want to be playing this unless like the thing you're destroying is going to float into more bodies as well to get into these synchro summons. But a decent extender out of a level 6 tuner is kind of not very common in Yu-Gi-Oh! So definitely could come up somewhere down the line. We'll see. And he also seems to be like the focal point of the new lore with like Scareclaw and stuff. So we'll have to see where that lore goes, and if they build more around him and whatnot. But you know, interesting card. We'll just have to see where he ends up being splashable. But yeah, that's the generic cards. I would say there's no like crazy generic bombs. Like any deck will play this. I'm talking about your Pot of Extravagances, your Pot of Prosperities, those kinds of things. Lightning Storm, Forbidden Droplet, you know what I mean? Triple Tactus Towns, cards that like literally any player, if they're just a competitive player, they're going to want at some point. I don't know if that exists in this deck, and I think that's the one knock on it so far, is like a lot of this stuff is a little bit targeted. Like the Therian engine is really cool, but if you're not interested in a plant or machine deck, I don't know if you care about the engine unless you're going to play a pure. Right? And Beyond the Pendulum and Extra Pendulum are like insane pendulum support cards, but that's exactly it. They're pendulum support cards. If you don't play pendulum, you literally don't care. So I think that's the one part missing out of this decks or this set so far, is there's no generic like everybody wants that card, or everybody wants those 2 cards. They're going to be the biggest chase cards. This card will be chased by a lot of people, but not everybody. And I do think that will take a little bit of chase from this set, is there's going to be a lot of people that look at it and go, I don't particularly care about the archetypes that are supported in here, so I don't really care that much. And that's just the reality of how it works. But I do still think it's a good set all in all. I think the execution in support for all the decks were supported. The 2 new archetypes have hella potential, and the generic cards that are more generic, even though it's not game-wide generic, it's more like archetype-wide or type-wide generic, they're still really solid, and there's a handful of them. So all in all, I think it's probably like maybe a 7 to an 8 out of 10 kind of set. You know what I mean? Maybe a 7.5, something like that. Definitely missing the like bomb generic card that everybody wants, but I think they just did a good job everywhere else. And of course, we don't know yet. We're going to have to see what the TCG exclusives are. Maybe there's another archetype in there that takes it to the next level. Maybe there's 1 or 2 generic cards that come out there that like take things to the next level. We never know, but hopefully Konami does a good job with it. So all in all, good set. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts as well. So let me know down below your thoughts on Dimension Force as a whole so far. What are you thinking? Good set, not good set? Give me a ranking out of 10 and tell me why. I'd love to see what you're thinking there. But that's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more discussion videos like this one down the line. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.